Hi, welcome back to Cybersecurity for Everyone. I'm Dr. Charles Airy. In this episode, I want to talk about the next two phases of the hacking process, exploitation and installation. If you recall, hacking is a process. It's not a single activity. In fact, it's a grouping of several activities altogether that strung together create what is called a hack. In this particular episode, I want to talk about two specific phases, exploitation and installation. So once we've reached our target, remember, we've now delivered our exploit. We've delivered that exploit to target through a variety of different means, and those could include everything from sending a direct email, which we call spearfish, direct message through social media, a USB drive, even compromising a web page, or even having direct access to the machine itself. The hacker is now poised to exploit the device. The exploitation is attempted against that device that you're now in contact with. And if successful, malware is installed, bad software, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So let's first talk about exploitation. Well, this is when the user and the user system is directly interacting with the malicious exploit code that we've developed. And so that usually means something like clicking on a link or opening a particular document. Now, there are other ways to exploit devices. We're not going to talk about those right now in this course, but it's good enough to know that what we're talking about is interacting with the exploit code. So the system, for example, a web browser, is now exposed to the exploit code. If successful, a connection is now made back to the threat actor's infrastructure. And that provides the threat actor direct access to the system. Now, at this point, they haven't installed anything. They haven't installed their own software. They've simply exploited the device and created a direct connection back to their infrastructure. So let's take a look at an example. So the Advanced Persistent Threat Group, or APT group, Ocean Lotus, it's a Vietnamese hacking organization, used Microsoft Word documents as a way to try to entice individuals. These are called oftentimes lure files, kind of like a phishing lure. And the idea is to try to entice users to click and open them to execute that actual exploit code that's embedded in the document. The documents are oftentimes drafted to make it look enticing to the user. So imagine, you are an employee at an organization and you get an email and there's an attachment and language in the email that talks about, this is the breakdown of all employee salaries. You might actually be somewhat inclined and a little bit curious to see how much Bob is making down the hall. So you might click on it. Once executed, a connection is made back to Ocean Lotus's infrastructure. Now, we're not going to go into deep detail about that infrastructure and that specific set of hacks. It's good enough to understand that when you interact with the exploit code, it creates a connection back to the threat actor's infrastructure. Now let's talk about installation. So we've exploited the device. The device that is successfully exploited through some specific vulnerability that we've identified during the weaponization phase now allows that threat actor to install software. We call this malware, right? These are programs that have been created by the threat actor that help facilitate additional actions on target to include moving around to other computers in the impacted network. Threat actors will use a range of different techniques to persistently maintain access to the device. And here are a couple of different examples. They can hook into existing processes, so processes that run on a normal basis, that boot up every time your computer boots up. They're going to hook into that. It's a way to constantly keep their malware running. They can create administrative accounts that allow them to log in at any time they need to. And they can modify the loading order of very specific files called DLL files to enable their malware every single time the computer boots up. So what are some of the takeaways? Well, hacking again is a process. I keep reiterating this. The fourth phase is called exploitation. Now, exploitation is when a threat actor's code is executed on the target's device and creates a connection back to their infrastructure. The fifth phase of the hacking process is called installation. I've now successfully exploited a device, and now I'm actually installing my software. That software is also known as malware. In our next episode, we're going to talk about command and control, how threat actors actually maintain access to these compromised devices. I hope to see you next time.